Hi, we have the pleasure today of being with Andy Workman, who is a successful speaker, author, solution-focused hypnotherapist, whose services are enjoying increasing demand from all over the world. His popular approach to the subjects of mental health and mindset development come from his unique blend of professional knowledge, endless research, life experience, and a genuine desire to help you reach your full potential for health, wealth, and happiness. Utilising over a decade in clinical practice, combined with over 30 years as a police officer, Andy brings a reality to his work which makes his message so much easier to understand, retain, and utilise in everyday life. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you. Thank you.
It's lovely to meet you. And reading your book, you've written a wonderful book called Cavemen and Polar Bears, and it's to help people with their mood and their mindset. And there's a quote that you use in the book, which I just absolutely love. It's the Einstein quote, which is, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." And I think this actually kind of sums up the work you do, isn't it? You demystify and help people to understand quite a complicated subject, in the form of a book and the therapy sessions that you do. And these are the tools that people then learn can be lifelong, can't they?
They can, and that's very nice of you to say so. I do try to simplify things so that people can understand what's going on. In my research and my training as a hypnotherapist, and in fairness, you don't do 32 years as a police officer without having a few problems yourself now and again. So I ended up reading an awful lot of books, and so many of them, as much as I grasped what they were saying, it got to the point where I just couldn't read any more that day. My head was about to explode with lots of jargon and terminology, and I just thought, you know what? Some people that are at their lowest ebb look for help, but when they pick up a book like that, if they haven't even got the energy to blink their eyes sometimes, how on earth are they going to get through a book of this magnitude? So my mission really, and that's a very grand word, isn't it? But my idea really was to try to, as you say, demystify and simplify things so that anybody could pick up my book, whether they were studying to become a therapist themselves or whether they were looking for help of some description. They had something they could pick up, they could read easily. It's written on purpose, it's written in little bursts, so that you don't have to look at the length of a chapter before you start. One of my awful habits. How long is this chapter? Can I fit this in before my eyes close to go to sleep? So all of the little sections are done on purpose so that you can just immediately ready reference and easily find the one thing that you want to go back to. And it seems to have worked well. I'm so pleased with how the book's gone down.
It's fantastic. And it's not only for people who are feeling like they need some tools, some self-help tools for their mental health. It's for therapists and really anyone who wants to kind of understand how their brain works and to be able to actually control the cavemen tendencies and polar bears and I mean, it is just such a good title actually, and that it's one that you can remember. And so for people who haven't yet read your book, they'll be wondering how do cave bears and polar bears, how does this relate to the brain and the mindset? So in a nutshell, how would you describe that for people who don't know?
Okay, well, the caveman refers to our prehistoric and primitive responses to everything. So, as human beings, we've developed a great deal. Now, whether we believe that we came from Adam and Eve or whether we believe in evolution is irrelevant. What we do know is that we couldn't put space shuttles up into the sky successfully when we first arrived here, regardless of how that was. So our human brain has continued to develop since we arrived, and it continues to do so now. But the bit in the middle of the brain, the limbic system, the one that runs our emotions and our immediate instinctive responses to anything, that hasn't developed a great deal since we first arrived. So the caveman in us is still there. The cave woman is still there. We've still got those primitive, prehistoric, instinctive responses. So that's the caveman. The polar bear is anything that's going to cause us fear that gets that caveman within us to respond. So
outside of us, the caveman is sort of within us. Is that right? And the polar bear is something that's coming from outside, you know, into our.
It certainly can. That's a very valid point, Natalie. It can be. Of course, the polar bear is usually an external stimulus that gets us to respond. But as I look at in the book, actually, the polar bear can also be your thoughts. We can sit and worry about the future and scare ourselves witless, when in actual fact, we have no idea what the future holds. And, you know, without being morbid about it, my previous professional history has taught me that an awful lot of people showed me through their passing that tomorrow is not guaranteed. So what the hell are we worrying about it for? You know, so we can't be blasé, we can't be completely carefree and not give a damn what's happening, but in the future. But we do have to be sensible about how much time we worry about things which might never happen. So the polar bear is anything, including our thoughts or external stimuli, that which are going to trigger our natural prehistoric and instinctive responses. And that can be happy things as well. But it's just an easy way of describing how, when we arrived here as cavemen, then we would have had those instinctive responses to be able to be ready for the polar bear when it arrived.
And you talk about in the book, you say, you know, imagined stress is just as real as actual stresses, or, you know, if you put it in, if it's coming from your head, your amygdala is just going to respond to it the same way. It's a thought, it's scary. And you had one technique, the vital question to ask when worrying. And I thought this was terrific. Could you share that with folks?
Absolutely. Well, I think Armand, I think you're referring to the dafty questions that I ask people. I ask them to make 2 lists. And one of the, I say to them, if you're a worrier, and you want to know how to stop, make yourself 2 lists. The first list is, I'd like you to list all the things that you have ever solved by worrying about them alone. All the things that you've never done anything, but just sat and worried about it, and you solved it. And in actual fact, that's of course the shortest list in the world. So, because there's nothing that worries that solves alone. So the second list is, I ask people to make a list of all the things they've ever worried about that didn't turn out to be nearly as bad as what they first thought when they were worrying. And in actual fact, that list is endless, because how many times have including me, every single one of us has been sitting there worrying and worrying and worrying. And actually, when the event occurs, if it ever does, then actually we find that what we worried about is just ridiculous, because the impact of that incident has been minuscule in comparison. So it's about what are we worrying about? What's the reality in that worry? What can we guarantee that we can work on, and doing something about that, but not catastrophizing and building up the problem much bigger than it existed in the first place.
Yeah, which is creating all the stress hormones, isn't it? You know, when that happens as well. So it's all that waste of energy, and that's what can create the anxiety, isn't it? I suppose thinking,
of course, yeah.
The worst, and then it's like you're there, yeah, and you have the stress hormones telling you that it's actually happening. Power of visualization. So is it flipping the coin so that you can, you know, do the opposite to create what you want?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so many of us are taught to, we hear so many people talk to us about visualization. Visualize what your ideal goal, visualize that interview before you go, visualize this. And I'm not knocking that. That's incredibly powerful. That's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah. But the question I ask people is, if we think that works, why on earth would it not be the same that if we visualize disaster, our body feels that as well? And it's true, you know.
You may as well be there, and that's like leading to stress and illness and the whole Yeah. So are you finding, during these pandemic times, are you finding that your work has changed? Are there more people, needing to, find out what they need to sort of put into their minds and to understand their mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we have to bear in mind is that actually what keeps us nicely mentally buoyant, although sometimes it might not seem that way, one of the things that keeps us nicely mentally buoyant is positive interaction with other individuals. And so even before the COVID pandemic, one of the worst things that any employer could do is recognize somebody has a mental health problem and send them home until they get better. That's one of the worst things they could do. I mean, lessen their workload, to de-stress some of the tasks that you are giving them, but don't send them home to sit on their own and just think about how ill they feel, because actually positive interaction with other human beings is a massive plus to our mental well-being. So actually people being furloughed or being asked to work from home, to start with, that sounds like, oh my goodness, being paid to do nothing, this is amazing. And oh my goodness, being at home so I don't have to pay for childcare or get the dog walker in or anything, that's great. But they suddenly realize, of course, that they're not even getting a hello from another human being. They're not even getting eye contact unless it's via Zoom. So as much as that's effective, every one of us knows that you pick up so much more warmth in a conversation and an encounter if you're in person. So yes, I've had a good deal of interaction from individuals looking for help because their mood has fallen. But also I work very closely with an awful lot of corporate people that I will do presentations for companies and organizations. So a number of them have had the foresight, luckily, of getting their employees and colleagues some sort of mental health input before the problem hits in. So it's
really. So aside from the interaction, what are the other ways that people can create the positive energy and the right chemicals and hormones that make them feel happy?
Right. Okay. So as a lot of people will know already, I'm sure, there are I think there's the three things that we need to do. The first thing is the positive interaction. So we've already covered that one. And that's really important for another reason as well. And that is to recognize the influence that negative people have on us. Now, we cannot just to cut people out of our lives just because they're a bit negative. Apart from the fact that we might be very lonely by the end of it, and that's not a great byproduct. It's also bullying. We need to be very careful that we don't exclude people. But what we do need to recognize that if they are negative, they are going to drag us down too. So positive interaction is not only seeking the positives, it's also looking out to safeguard ourselves against the negative people around us. And the way I describe that to people is that if I was to yawn now, you would yawn. I only have to yawn once and you would yawn. And the fact that I've said yawn 4 times now would suggest that actually 1 or 2 of you might feel like yawning right now. And that's fine. That's fine. But that's how powerful it is, you see. When I do a conference with a company, I will play with that and they'll all be yawning. Hopefully not because I'm doing a talk. But the whole point is that when you say something, your brain immediately picks up on it and it immediately reflects that and it copies it. So that's why if I smile, you smile back. You have to. We reflect each other. We mirror each other. So imagine
online,
then if
actually, it's like we've got so used to now connecting online that we're starting to do that, aren't we, on Zoom calls as well?
Course. Yeah. Of course. So the point is that if we do that with a smile, if we do it with a yawn, we're going to do it with a frown as well. Yeah. So it's just being aware that if there are people that are negative around us, we either need to gently limit the time we spend with them or counter their negativity with some positivity and love them to bits. Love them to bits. The other thing that absolutely, I often use the Oscar Wilde quotation. And Oscar Wilde, amongst all of his other fantastic things that he said, once used the expression, love your enemies. Nothing annoys them more. And it's right as well. It's not about being antagonistic. It's not about being aggressive towards anybody. It's about not annoying them, but thwarting their efforts in bringing the atmosphere down. So
it's like by on yourself, by making sure you're okay, then you have the balance and resilience to deal with that negativity. But when you're not okay, it's like suddenly you're reacting rather than not responding. So it's so important now, isn't it, well, it's always been important, hasn't it, for to take care of yourself, your own mental well-being, and then you're going to have better relationships, aren't you? And like attracts like, isn't it, really, as well?
Absolutely. Yep, you're so right. And of course, when you say looking after yourself, that brings you on to the next thing that I always suggest people do, and that is to find something that they like doing and to do it for themselves, and do it for about 20 minutes a day if you can. So this is positive actions. This is what we refer to as positive actions. Now, a lot of people will say, I haven't got 20 minutes in a day. You see, that's how stupid your policy is, because where am I going to find 20 minutes in a day? So the first thing I explain to them is that there are 1,440 minutes in every 24 hours. So all I'm asking you out of that 1,440 minutes is to use 20 of them. That hasn't even cracked into the first 100 minutes of that 1,000 plus. So 20 minutes a day. I say to people, say, why 20 minutes? Because actually, if I say 10, you'll think, oh, it's never worth bothering. 10 minutes, that's not worth bothering. If I say half an hour, oh my goodness, that is just impossible now. That's just impossible. So let's get a nice little middle ground there and say 20 minutes. So when I say do it for something for themselves, that's what I mean. You've got to do something for you. So when I was asked this question, when I was poorly at one stage, and I was asked this question, the lady that was trying to help me as a counsellor, said to me, what do you do for you? And I said, oh, I love watching my young son play football. I go, oh, no, that's a daddy duty. I said, well, no, it wasn't, though, was it? Because, he's my son. And well, let me ask you a question. She said, would you go and watch schoolboy football if your son wasn't playing? I said, well, no, of course I wouldn't. She said, well, it's not for you then, is it? That's a daddy duty. Oh, okay. So what else do you do for you? And I went through a list. And all the things I was doing, even though I thought they were my hobbies, I was doing them for other people. So eventually she said, what would you do? And I said, well, if I had 20 minutes to myself every day, this sounds ridiculous, but I would learn to play the Highland bagpipes. And she said, well, then do it. And okay. Well, I actually did that. I went off and I took her up by her word, and I took lessons. And in actual fact, as a result of that, I ended up playing the Highland bagpipe semi-professionally for 10 years. But, the reason I stopped playing them was because they'd suddenly become a job, that I wasn't doing it for me anymore. So find something else. So I sold my bagpipes and all my uniform and everything else, and now I play the saxophone. What I've never done with my saxophone is I've never played it for anyone else. It's for me. I think the whole world needs to be grateful that I don't play my saxophone to anyone else, but it's for me. So I also paint. I also keep bees. I'm a beekeeper. And at least 5 or 6 hours a week, I ballroom dance with my wife. So if nothing else, that gives me a period of time during the week that I can actually hold my wife in my arms. And I'm a busy man. I don't get to do it if I'm not dancing with her. So the whole point is that you look after yourself. Now, some people might think that's selfish. Some people say, that is just so self-centered. But what I say to people is it's very much like first aid. Now, most of us at some point have been taught first aid. And you learn that actually there is a system that you work through to ensure that you afford everybody the best care. And of course, the very first thing on the first aid schedule of actions is that you prioritize, and you prioritize who you deal with first. So I say to people, when you get to that incident, is it the person sat in the corner holding his hand saying it hurts, it hurts? No, if he can shout and scream, as long as it hurts, he's conscious enough to know that, he's okay. Is it the lifeless lump at your feet? Well, she hasn't moved for the last 15 seconds, so maybe that's the time that we really need to get on with her. But actually, The priority at any first aid situation is the first aider. Because if the first aider gets hurt, nobody's got any help. So it's exactly the same in life. If you don't look after you, you will go bang. And when you go bang, you won't be able to help else. Whenever we say we haven't got time, we haven't got time, we haven't got time. And then your mum gives you a phone call, or your sister knocks on the door, or a friend suddenly rushes up the driveway and says, I need you now. And we drop everything. We drop everything for everyone else. Why can't we give ourselves 20 minutes? Because actually, if we do that, we will feel better. We will be far more resilient when other people ask for our time. And the whole looking after yourself so that you can look after everyone else is borne out. It's wonderful. So it's about positive actions, positive interaction. And the last one I always say to people is positive thought. Now, positive, forgive me, but this is the way I describe it. Positive thought is not necessarily about mindfulness and meditation, both of which are fantastic, both of which I practice. But the way I describe it is that there's a nasty little word in the English language, which is known over most of the planet. And the nasty little word starts with C, it ends with T, and it's 4 letters long. And it's not the one that most of you have got in your head. It's the word can't. And if you were thinking anything else, that's very naughty. But the whole point is that it's can't. And the second you say you can't do something, your brain knows no difference between imagination and reality. In actual fact, I describe it as a genie. The second you say you can't do something, your brain says, your wish is my command. I can't play the saxophone. Your wish is my command. I can't draw. Your wish is my command. I can't cope with the rest of the day. Your wish is my command. If on the other hand, I can, I couldn't play the saxophone when I picked it up, but when I picked it up and said, I can do this, I can learn this, funnily enough, I still am. My journey with the instrument will never stop, I'm sure. But the whole point is lots of people will say, I can't draw. I can't draw. Armand was very kind earlier and pointed out that I'd illustrated my book. Yes, I did, but I wasn't born able to draw. I thought I can do this and I can get better. And years later, I'm able to illustrate a book. So it's getting rid of the can't in your language about anything will enable that you can do things.
And this is what you help people with in their lives, through the hypnotherapy, isn't it? Through changing the I can't, the outmoded scripts, mental scripts they have, helping them to change them into positives. And I mean, it's the power of language as well, isn't it? The power of those words, I can't, is so much more powerful than maybe people would realize. The link between language and our brains and the bridge between the two.
The internal conversations we have with ourselves are just phenomenally powerful. You cannot put a measure on the conversations we have with ourselves. And if we are really honest, one of the things I explain to people is that actually the conversations we have with ourselves are the sort of things sometimes, not always, that we would never tolerate anybody else saying to anyone else. We say things to ourselves that we wouldn't say to our children, we wouldn't dream of saying to our partners. We would lose friends if we said them. Some of the things we say are so spiteful and, more importantly, dishonest that we would never get away with it if we said it to anyone else. We will say to it, we will sometimes get angry with ourselves and say, I'm so useless. Why can't I do this? I'm just so hopeless. If you said to a friend, you're so useless, you're so hopeless, you can't do this, they wouldn't tolerate that and you wouldn't dream of saying it. But the difference is, of course, is that actually if you see somebody else say those things to someone else, you can actually stop them and say, whoa. That's not true. That wasn't right. You shouldn't say that. That was offensive. It was inappropriate and it was really unnecessary. So sometimes we have to recognize that when we're having that conversation with ourselves, nobody can hear it. No. There is no choice that anybody else will step in and say, Andy, useless? Really? You think you're useless? Really? You think you're a flake and you can't cope? What are you talking about? Nobody else can do that. So we have to do it for ourselves. We have to catch ourselves, recognize the conversation we're having with ourselves and turn it on its head. I can do this. I'm strong. I'm resilient. I'm well. And even though that at the time might be a lie, even though at the time you know you're telling yourself an untruth because you don't feel resilient, your brain that's listening to that conversation doesn't know that. That's one of the secrets I've come across. The more you talk to your brain, the more it doesn't know whether you're telling it a lie or the truth. So if you're going to be telling it, people will say, I don't want to lie to myself. I don't want to lie to myself. But forgive me, you have been.
Yeah.
Every time you say, I am useless, I can't cope, this is beyond me, that's been a lie. So if you're going to lie, do it positively. I can cope. I am well. I am resilient. I can do this. Because you've been lying to yourself all along. I'm just asking you to change the polarity from negative to positive. Simple as that.
Yeah.
No wonder you have the I think the best title of anybody. You mindset specialist. I thought that was just so brilliant. That's just so most brilliant title to assign yourself. I like that. It's extraordinary, isn't it, that we accept, in both positive action and positive thoughts, we accept such negativity. We almost expect it. I mean, it's fine to be, oh, I'm an idiot. You could spew that out all day long. People would never really think twice about it. And, the idea that you don't have any time for yourself or something like that, we accept that so easily in our culture, don't we?
We do. You're absolutely right, Armand. And you're absolutely right. That's the word I would say. It's culture. It's culture. And it's just crazy. It's the fact that we've been brought up, and certainly, forgive me, but in the UK in particular, because that's my life experience, we've been brought up that we mustn't be big-headed, we mustn't be proud. Oh, pride comes before a fall. We mustn't big ourselves up. People don't like a big head, but it's not big-headed to recognize your own strengths and abilities. And when we see other people do it, we say, good for you, you go, girl, absolutely fantastic. But we don't do it for ourselves. It's just crazy, and I'm sorry to say, culturally, when it comes to the time for yourself, culturally in the Western world, we are still very bad at allowing ladies, in particular females, to have their own time. And the way I describe that to my female clients is that actually, when I was a police officer, I made the rank of inspector. It's not grand, but it was a little bit higher up. I was a manager. And if I went out on an evening with my team, somebody might come to my home and say to Karen, my lovely wife, where's Andy? And she would say, well, his team have done so well this week, he's taken them out for a drink. Oh, fantastic. Oh, how kind. Now, the next evening, they might come to my home. I might be there looking after the children. I never babysat because they were my children. I don't babysit my children. She assures me they're mine. But I'm never babysat my children. I looked after them. So I'm home looking after my boys. And the same people come to my home and say, where's Karen? And I'll say, well, her office have done so well. Their manager has taken her out for a drink. What, on a school night? Nobody would have asked that question of me. Not one single person would have asked that question of me because I'm male. But a mother going out on a school night, what's that about? Now, that might have started to calm itself a little bit. Please, God, the equality starts to show itself a bit better. But the whole point is ladies in particular are under an immense amount of pressure to be the best wife and the best mum and the best partner and the best. Just chill. Just do your best, and nobody can ask any more of you than that. Do your best. And you're not going to do your best if you don't give yourself some time to be able to recharge your batteries and recuperate. So it's so vitally important to lose that cultural pressure of constantly keeping going for other people. It's not selfish to look after you.
That's so important, and I agree. It is we do have a big gender bias in that respect in our culture, and it is improving, but it is still there.
Yeah, yeah. But it's so, you know, it's only by recognizing these things that we can actually address them, and a lot of that is not only about other people not saying it, but it's about the people that are affected by us taking their ground and saying, you know what, I'm as entitled to this as everyone else, and I am going to have my 5 minutes, and I am going to go out for a drink with the girls. And I keep talking about drinking, when in actual fact I very rarely do it myself, but you know what I mean. I'm going to have a social life. I'm going to enjoy company other than inside the home. So it's, and sometimes, you know, there's nothing more cathartic to get your spirits up than to be able to go out and enjoy some company that isn't where you find all your major stresses. And obviously, as family people, sometimes that's at home.
Exactly. So self-care, self-love is so important, aren't they? To, you know, not only being balanced and happy yourself, but having positive interactions with other people. You know, having good relationships. The relationship you have with yourself will be, you know, obviously, you know, have a bearing, won't it, on how you are with others. You know, how you're treating yourself. And I mean, I notice it in my work as a therapist, you know, people just not having time for themselves, or asking them how their week has been, and it's all about other people, but they haven't mentioned themselves, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that's just so common, isn't it? But you know, sometimes it largely comes back to that relationship you're having with yourself and the dialogue that you're sharing in your own head. Because, you know, part of the reason that some people don't enjoy other people's company nearly as much as they should is because the dialogue they're having with themselves is that, why would they want me? Why would they want to go out with me? I'm boring. I'm not going to want to go. They're not going to want to go out for a drink with me. I'm not even going to ask them, because I can't stand the rejection. When in actual fact, when the people are going out, they're saying, well, where's Mel? Why isn't Melanie coming out? We'd love her to come out. And Melanie's not there because she doesn't think they would want her. So it's all that false dialogue you're having with yourself all the time. And it's trying to turn that around.
I do a lot of meditation myself. And one of the people, you know, when they talk about or ask questions, I always say, if you don't, you're very likely to you're going to believe the dialogue in your head. You're going to think that, you know, everything that's going on there is great, and you're thinking great thought. And when you meditate, you say, my gosh, I'm watching a lot of reruns, and a lot of these scripts I didn't even really write, and a lot of them are not so useful. You know, you used to say, oh my gosh, you know, there's a lot of chatter going on out there, and some of it, as you say, some of it's really negative. But some of it is really just, you know, it's just not helpful. It's kind of neutral. You know, but I think that when you get that awareness of what's going on inside your head, you're a lot less enamored with it.
Absolutely. And you know, when we're talking about talking to yourself and doing it in a positive way, we're not talking about that sudden injection of arrogance. You know, I'm the best thing since sliced bread, everybody loves me. But it's just getting that nice, comfortable balance of, I'm okay, everything is well, I am well, every cell in my body is healthy. Every relationship I have, I enjoy it at the level it is at the moment, and I hope to improve it. So it's not about I'm the bee's knees and everybody should love me and kowtow, and it's not that at all. It's just a healthy recognition that you are. I try to say to people that every single one of us as human beings brings a light into the world, and it's our purpose in life to keep that light burning. Because at some point, it's just going to reflect on other people and make them feel warm and bright as a result. And if we can do that, there's no arrogance in that. It's just your light, and you're just sharing it. And sometimes to be able to keep that light burning, we just need to refuel it sometimes. We just need to blow a little bit of fresh air onto it and say, you're okay. You're all right. You're a nice guy. You're a nice girl. You can do this. And it's having that sort of conversation with yourself is so beneficial. But it's interesting how you refer to it, Armand, as the script and the movie in your head, because the way I say it is that, look, you are the director of your life, and whether you have religious beliefs or not, that's entirely up to you. And there is clearly, for some of us, a major director who is the producer of this movie. Having said that, you are the director of your individual movies in your head. And whether you make them Spielberg and warm and lovely, or Tarantino and incredibly violent and negative and nasty, you are the director. Spielberg or Tarantino, you make the choice, you know? I happen to like both of those directors. I'm not knocking either of them. But in your own movie, you might not want it to make a slash movie when actually it can be much more warm and loving. So yeah, you direct your movies in your own head, and it's your choice what scripts they use, what action you see. And it's beneficial when you suddenly realize that.
Well, thank you so much for this talk, Andy. This has really been this has been fascinating and wonderful. And you know what? It feels good, and I'm sure that comes across. It feels good. It's a refresher.
Good. Then you've made my day. That's fantastic. Thank you. And
I've so enjoyed that. I've so enjoyed talking with you. And can I just say your website and let the viewers and readers know where to find you if they want to get a copy of your Cavemen and Polar Bears book.
Yeah, sure. That's very kind. Thank you. So my website, anybody's welcome to join me. My website is fairly simple. It's just my name, andyworkman.co.uk. People can email me at info@andyworkman.co.uk. And my book, forgive me my gratuitous advertising, my book, Cavemen and Polar Bears, is available on Amazon. And it's on Audible, and it's in Kindle as well. So if you want to read it yourself, you can do. If you want me to read it in my lovely Bristolian accent, I appreciate that won't suit everybody. But if you want my scarecrow version of my book, then it's available on Audible. So I'll read it to you. But that's very kind. And I'm on social media and most platforms of social media. So if anybody wants to join me and befriend me or follow me, then they're more than welcome.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks so much. It's been brilliant.
No, thank you. It's been a real joy speaking to you. Thank you.
Andy. Talk again soon, I hope.
I hope so. It'll be very nice to see you again.
Take care. Bye-bye.